The Real Juggle campaign with Madison Berkeley.
I'm Claire Coe. I'm the co-founder of Madison Berkeley. Through recruitment, Madison Berkeley works hard to change the face of real estate, and this campaign is part of that commitment. I'm also a mother of 2 young children and really passionate about our latest campaign. With me today from Madison Berkeley and joining the discussion is my wonderful colleague, Jack Heckel.
Thanks, Claire. I guess it's probably worth saying that I'm not a father, so all of this and a lot of this of what I'm learning is super new. But we do have 2 fantastic ladies joining us today who are parents, and it'd be great if you could both introduce yourselves, if you could just tell us your job title, the company you work for, and since this discussion and campaign is all about parenting in real estate, how many children you have and what ages they are. So Anthea, if I could pass over to you.
Yep. Hi, I'm Anthea Harries. I'm Asset Management Director at Related Argent. I've worked on major central London estates since I started out in this profession way too long ago to remember, but certainly over 25 years ago. So that's quite scary. I have 2 stepchildren that I've had full-time parental responsibility for since they were 6 and 10. They're now 26 and 30. And I have 2 sons who are 16 and 18. So I have 4.
And Anna, if you could, let us know the same, that'd be great.
Hello, I'm Anna Strongman. I'm the CEO of Oxford University Development, which is a joint venture between Oxford University and Legal & General. And we're building 4,000 new homes, new academic space, about 4 million square foot commercial, new major mixed-use schemes in the city. Previous to that, I worked for Argent. I worked alongside Anthea, so it's really delightful to be on the call with her. I have twins, aged 7, a boy and a girl. I also have a husband. So we're not
Let's not forget that
today. But equally demanding in many ways.
Anna, could you please talk us through what a typical week looks like balancing work, family life?
Before I dive into that, the really important thing about this issue is that every parent has to find their own route through work and parenting and make their choices and sort of navigate that landscape. And we all have to support each other in those choices. I think that's really important. I have always wanted to work full time. I love working. I love my kids, but I really love working. And I came back to work after 4 months of maternity leave, and I've pretty much worked full time ever since. So in terms of my week, I work 5 days a week. I drop my kids off in the morning at school, get on my bike, cycle to the office, do a full day's work in the office. I very rarely work at home because I'm running a team and it's quite a high pressured environment. So I have to be here to motivate, to energize. Someone once said to me, CEO is Chief Energy Officer, and I think there's something in that. And I work till 6 or 7. I have a nanny who picks up my kids from school and she stays till 7:30 at night. And so I'm either back home or my husband goes home. Often I have an event. I'd say I have 2 or 3 events a week. I think one of the elements of our industry, it's good to acknowledge, is that it's still very relationship based and there is a lot of socializing involved in that, which can pose additional challenges balancing all those things, but I don't think it can be ignored because I think it is critical to building a career. And occasionally I'm trying run home.
As well as a cycle in.
As well as a cycle in, yeah. That's my typical week. I would say I don't see so much of my kids in the week, but I try very hard to be with them at the weekend. And when I'm with them, I'm with them. So I put my phones away, put my computer away, and really try to focus on them. But in the week, my time with them is much more limited.
In terms of staying motivated and energized, especially in the early days, I came back to work after 6 months, was still working in that sort of 6 months, but doing the day-to-day recruitment. And I'm 8 months in. Well, my little boy's 8 months, so I'm still
Oh, wow.
early days, sleepless night. Do you have any advice when you return back to work to keep that energy up when you're on your third coffee of the day after sort of 4 hours sleep the night before?
Yes, I think we all have to acknowledge when our kids are young, it is particularly physically tiring. I'm sure Anthea can fill us in on some of the challenges when having older kids. I don't think it's any less hard, but I think the challenges are slightly different. And I think when your kids are small, it is physically challenging, particularly when you're carting two twins around. I'd say two things. I think the first thing is you really have to have a partnership with your husband. So in terms of my husband, we've always shared the childcare equally. He also works 5 days a week, but we both compromise and are flexible and trying to manage those things. I think the second thing, which I think is something which is really important to acknowledge but is tricky, is I've always been very fortunate that I have been able to afford help. And I think there's nothing worse than people on these sorts of calls talking about all the things that they can afford to do and not acknowledging that not everyone can do that. And I have been very, very lucky in the fact that I have been able to afford a cleaner and a gardener, and someone dealt with my tax return as well as childcare support. And I've made financial sacrifices to do that. I've accepted that I'd rather pay someone else to do the stuff that I don't want to do the stuff I do want to do. And I think that is quite important to acknowledge that, and we all have to do our bit to lobby for free childcare. That's a political statement, but I believe the state should provide more support, not necessarily to people like me, but people who can't afford that level of support. But I think that has helped me, and I've just accepted, I don't even add it up, it's too scary and you think, well, why am I bothering working? But I pay people to do what I'm not so good at, and accept that enables me to do what I am good at and I really enjoy. But I think we all have to lobby and support and write to our MPs to get as much support for women and men to be able to pursue their career and their employment and to play a productive role in the economy.
Anthea, I guess sort of a similar question to you, and sort of how do you balance the school holidays? And obviously now with nursery, we have longer hours. My son's in a nursery that isn't term time, so I don't have to worry about school holidays, but he is starting school in September. So how do you manage that?
I won't go over what Anna's just said, but I totally agree with it. I mean, I've always been very driven around my career. I always knew when I had my two stepchildren, first at 6 and 10, that I immediately took on responsibilities from being this sort of young 20, didn't have any responsibilities but my job, to suddenly having two kids that actually weren't mine. That was really, really difficult. That was really tough, because actually at the time, people in the industry and people I worked with and people and my employer didn't see that they were then suddenly my children, but they lived with me full time. So that was really quite a tricky dynamic. And then when the boys came, like Anna, I actually put them into nursery. We tried a nanny and we got let down a few times. So we decided to put the boys into a nursery. And for many, many years, I genuinely dropped them off and then walked to the station and felt like I was getting on the train to go and earn no money, and then come back again, pick them up and do the same for what felt like 10 years and probably in reality was 10 years. But I always knew that I wanted a career. I wanted to work to progress that career. I had amazing support from friends and family and colleagues to try and do that. And I also pretty much have always worked full time. I think with the second one, I did drop it to 4 days a week for about 18 months. And yeah, it's incredibly difficult. I'm very fortunate that my husband is a teacher. I think he gets the rough end of the stick because he is with kids teaching primary school children all day, all term time, and then he comes back and he looks after the kids all day, non-term time, and often used to look after other people's kids because they'd phone him up and the nursery or the nanny had let them down or whatever, childcare. So he ended up being a bit of a playgroup for many years, actually, while the boys were young. I couldn't be doing my job, and I would say that he has sacrificed his professional career as a senior teacher that could have gone higher, because ultimately I was the breadwinner for the family. And that's a difficult dynamic. There's always a challenge between a partnership in whatever form that is, that you're always going to have this sort of constant battle around whose job is more important at any one time, and try and juggle that without affecting the kids and without affecting both of your careers. So I think that was quite a tricky period, I would say, for our relationship and also to continue to evolve professionally. Now the girls have left home and, they live off their own. And I think they would say they're very grateful to have had us as role models, both parents really wanting to, forge their own careers, work hard to give them everything we could, but was never taken for granted. And I think they would say that they weren't compromised as a result of that. I would hope they would say that anyway. With the younger two now at 16 and 18, I'm based in London now 4 to 5 days a week. That's our dynamic working policy. And I'm dealing with a big estate with, hundreds of thousands of customers, so need to be there. And I also have one of the biggest teams in the company as well. So I, like Anna, want to be in the office there and available for our stakeholders and also for my team. Having said that, I would say that over the last 6 weeks, I've probably had one of the most difficult periods of managing children in my whole time of being a mum. And that is, I've had my younger son and my older son doing their GCSEs and A-levels. And it's an entirely different level of anxiety. Again, similar in some respects to having young children, and the dynamic of that guilt and feeling like you want to go to work, but you should be at home, and, you're late coming back to nursery and you get charged for it. And you never have enough time to feel like you're doing either job properly. But this has been very, very difficult. I had to be open and honest with the business to say that 2 things. Logistically, they have exams at different times of the day, on different days of the week. They have to be able to get to school. With my husband being a teacher, his profession doesn't allow that flexibility because he's teaching. So I've had to ask for permission to be able to be at home more, to get them to where they need to be. And morally and parentally, I felt like I've needed to give them the support during this period, just to be here to take the phones off them, turn the gaming off, make them some food, just be a mum to them, but also be a bit of an enforcer around reaffirming how important these are for them. And that has felt very difficult to juggle, very difficult, because you do need to be around people in our industry to be able to genuinely do the best job that you can. It is a people-focused business, not just the real estate that we're managing. And that's felt really difficult. So I've had last 2 weeks primarily based at home, and I've got 1 week left, and I am counting the days literally to get back out into what feels like the normal world. But I suppose the point is here that the challenges don't stop. And I think what's really important is that we realise that this industry, your job, anybody's profession, is a marathon and not a sprint. And it's about ebbing and flowing what you need to do in your personal life and trying to get your professional working life and those colleagues and the businesses you work for to support you in that. And I think we are in a materially better place than we were. I would never have dreamed 10 years ago of being able to even ask that question, i.e. I need some more flexibility for these sort of 4 or 5 weeks. Now I think it is understood, it's accepted, it's actually a positive thing for leaders in a business to be able to set an example of where you do need to be flexible. A lot of it comes down to trust though. Employers need to trust that you're going to do the work. And there is always a difficult dynamic of managing that childcare, having the ability to really focus on doing a job and not being distracted by trying to do 2 jobs at once, which is parenting and doing whatever job you're doing. So I'm seeing it at the other end of the spectrum now, but the levels of complexity, stress, anxiety, worry, financial burdens, paying for tutors and doing this and doing that, it doesn't stop. It actually is just something that you have to juggle. And it is literally like spinning plates all the time. But actually, I always learn from it. I see it as a positive and try and always see the best out of it. And I hope that they, in 10 years' time, like the girls did, will look back and feel grateful for the support they've had from their parents.
I mean, that's really interesting, and really good to hear from you on that, from someone who's got little ones, and knowing and managing expectations in the future. And I think having small children now, and all the costs, it's a small period of your life, and then things change, and then obviously the costs come back again.
The Real Juggle campaign with Madison Berkeley.
Do you think it's got easier for parents in real estate from, I guess, before COVID was it changed things, and before that, and since your children were younger?
I do think it's got easier. I agree with Anna, the government have to do more to support, because I remember when they were young getting the 15 hours of free childcare, which broke down to 9 to 12 or 2 to 5 each day. It's virtually impossible to do a job like I have and work like that. So there needs to be more infrastructure. There needs to be more financial support to allow everybody who wants to work to have the ability to work. And not everybody does. And we acknowledge and appreciate that it's a choice. But ultimately, there needs to be more support around it. It is incredibly difficult, and I'm now in a position where I am able to get some additional help at home. But I remember the time just trying to do everything. It was exhausting, physically and mentally exhausting. So there needs to be more support for working parents. But we have made positive moves forward. I think the pandemic has escalated dynamic working, flexible working, the ability to work online versus in a physical space. But still, we need to be around people. And, I think we're shifting back now to appreciating the importance of having a workplace and being able to connect and collaborate with people.
And I guess touching on that, Anna, you're both super successful women in real estate and mums, I guess, most importantly, but it's clear that we've still got a long way to go with this. And I think Claire and I have been talking about it over the last few weeks, and we're just really saddened by how many young women approached us to be a part of this campaign, but for various different reasons felt they were unable to kind of give a transparent and truthful account of what it's really like for them, due to worries about how that might affect their job security. So I guess talking about what Anthea's done, what can be done, and how can we kind of give everyone a voice? And I mean, I guess even touching on that flexible working, how are you, and as a business, how are you trying to implement that and make life easier for people with young kids and even older kids?
Related Argent, we did look at a dynamic working policy. We do have a dynamic working policy that does enable those with childcare responsibilities to, for example, if they've got a school or nursery drop off, to come into work slightly later. And indeed, at the end of the day, to be flexible around any caring responsibilities they have. Having said that, employers are paying you to do a job, and you have to fulfill your role in that job, and you have to do it well. So that doesn't mean a shorter day unless you've actually got an agreement for a shorter day and are paid appropriately. So we do have a really clear expectation that you are free and unencumbered to work those contractual hours in a more flexible way, but you have to work them, and you therefore have to deliver performance on the role that you have. And I think that's where the dynamic's really tricky. And that's where you've got to work with family, friends, partnerships, help, support, to make sure you can still do your job and not feel like you're doing two jobs at once, because that's really difficult.
And Anna, what are you doing? How are you trying to manage this with your team and managing that process?
I've worked in bigger businesses and smaller businesses. I've been fortunate to work in businesses with pretty progressive cultures who have always had a pretty flexible approach to work. And I think that has become more nuanced over time. I think businesses have become more accepting of different people's choices. Because let's not forget, some people actually just do want to work 3 days a week or 2 days a week, or want to do a job share. And I think businesses have become a lot more up for discussing that. I think it does depend on the nature of the job, and it's not always easier to accommodate. But I think, as Anthea said, there's much more of a conversation around that. In terms of my own approach, I fundamentally believe in creating a culture of trust and a culture of collaborative working and mutual support, and a sense of purpose and a sense of ambition towards where we're heading. And I want the best people to work for me. So I am happy to compromise and to work around to enable the best people to work for me. So I have a fantastic infrastructure manager in my team. She 2 small kids, so she works compressed hours. She works some days at home. She loves to get in early and leave early, and we make that work. And I think if you do trust people and create that kind of motivational, mutually supportive culture, then people want to do their best for you. This sounds like some kind of idyllic world. Believe me, there are issues, but that's where we're trying to get to. And I think people then really do try and put their best foot forward. It's not without its challenges, but that's what I'm trying to do. And we do have a very energizing, sort of flexible, supportive environment. I think it's interesting, just an anecdote. Someone else who works with me, who's female, said when she had too many glasses of wine at the Christmas dinner, it's great working here and working in this team, and we're all kind of going towards one goal. I thought I'd hate working for a female boss, but it's turned out all right. And I thought, God, that's so interesting. Do we as female bosses always do our best? Do we sometimes try and overcompensate? So I think we in leadership positions have to challenge ourselves. It's that famous Madeleine Albright quote, the woman who doesn't support other women has got a special place in hell. I'm always trying to think about that, to provide that support and make sure that I'm actually being a good boss and not the one that everyone dreaded having, you see what I mean?
Yeah, well, I guess I say from my perspective, like working with Claire, just learning what she's had to go through over the last 8 months, having like a really young baby, for someone that, you know, it's totally blasé for me, has been so interesting.
I think also being vocal when I was in my 20s and in my first job, I didn't understand the balance of having children and working, and I was around successful women who were balancing, and I don't think you quite understand, whereas now I think it's more talked about and more vocal. And, you know, I'll come into the office in the morning and be open about I've been up since 4 with the little ones, but still here showing up and doing a good job. Whereas I think before, maybe when I was in my 20s, women were hiding that, and it must have been really hard for them to then sit down and come in. And that's just just communication and just simple things that can be done. Obviously, there's other things that are changing, which is more challenging, like the childcare costs. And we'll probably just finish on that. You know, the UK childcare system is the second most expensive in the world, and it's just extortionate with nursery fees and then wraparound care and holiday camps when you hit school. And I feel salaries aren't increasing at the same rate as those childcare costs. I get the increase in fees every April from my nursery, but the salaries for people that we're placing just aren't going up at that rate. And I've had people only this week in tears on the phone to me because their bonuses haven't been as good, and they're earning £100 a month and not seeing their children. It's heartbreaking to listen to. And I guess they are having to choose between their children or a career, and they want the career, but they can't afford it due to salaries. How can you have both?
Really difficult. The costs are astronomical when you look at effectively what is a sort of 320, 330 day cost when you look at your holiday. And even then, I think it's a compromise ultimately. As Anna's said, you know, she's gone without plenty of things to enable that career to progress, and you know, now in a fortunate position to be able to get the help. It is really, really hard. There is no getting around from that. And as I've said, I've done it, been there, gone to work, come back in a negative position by the time the nursery fees come in. I think it is unfortunately a choice. It's not an easy choice. It's sort of not the responsibility of your employer or your business to help fund that. I think there's other ways they can support that, but you have to weigh it up. And as I said before, it is a marathon, not a sprint, and it is a long time to be in the industry. And if that means what I've said through Mentoring Circle to younger women that are thinking about having children, if that is the right thing for you, then you need to do that. If that means that you're taking a career break, don't worry about that. You'll be able to come back into the industry, and actually the life skills that go with being a parent help you navigate more challenging aspects of your job. Indeed, then if you want the opposite of that and you are going to take a deep breath and realize that it's going to be very expensive, but you want to carry on, then there are inevitably compromises, which in my case used to mean camping on a nuky field with toilets half a mile away. And that was our holiday. It's really difficult. There's no getting around it. And it comes back to the point that there needs to be more support in place for parents across a broader range of salaries and across the country. And that includes actually attracting people into those forms of employment. Nursery nurses, nannies, they're equally in the same boat, earning lower income salaries to support other children. So there's no straightforward answer. It is a compromise and it's a journey that you have to try and navigate. And I think the more help you can get from friends and family, the easier it probably is.
And Anna, to you.
Well, I think everyone's got a right to their MP and ask for better childcare, cheaper childcare. I think everyone's got to ask their boss for a pay rise. I think just accept that this is a period of time and that, it might not make financial sense, but it's enabling you to do what you want to do. I do want to say, regardless of the cost of childcare, never feel guilty, right? Just chuck the guilt out the window. That is a total waste of time and energy. I love my kids to bits. I spend quality time with them. They've got a lot of people who are part of their lives who help look after them. I've never felt guilty about going to work. I really haven't. I love every minute of being at work. I love every minute being with my kids. Don't bother with the guilt.
I think also just to add to that, children are really resilient. What they love is the diversity of people that they're with. The majority of children love going to nursery, they enjoy school, they like play groups, they like opportunities to engage with other people, and they're very resilient to change. I think that's also important. Guilt bit, Anna's better at that than I am, but I've come to terms with it. Sometimes I would say guilt then turns into anxiety, and it's how you manage that, because you just want the best you want to do the best yourself and you want the best for your children as well. But they are very resilient, and when they're tiny and little and you worry about that, but they're not unhappy when they're being looked after properly.
Well, thank you so much, both of you, for joining. Please do listen to the other interviews in this campaign series, which will aim to tackle all the issues faced by parents working in real estate, and of course do share with your networks.